Hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. If you were a Midwesterner in the early 2000s, there is absolutely no way possible that this track didn't have an absolute chokehold on you. The strength of this song was so overwhelming that even Omaha, Nebraska native Adam Devine had this to say about it at a recent live event.
Dude,
They were a band in the early 2000s that we fucking loved, dude.
That riff?
Pomeroy, the Eskimo pie hits you right between the eye. You ask us why? Why? Because we're super fly. Never let the music die.
Dude, that's how I met this guy in like 02. Just all Pomeroy all the time in Orange County.
On this episode, I welcome my good friend David Fairbanks from the band Pomroy. He's also doing a project called Lost Wax, which we talk about, and he's got an upcoming mixtape / solo album called Lopan Banks, Pretty Good Rapper, and let me tell you, it's a pretty great album. I'm excited to welcome David Fairbanks to Caught on the Mic today. Check it out. I hope you love this episode. There's a lot of folklore and a lot of backstory that you maybe didn't know that you're going to find out right here. As always, listener and viewer discretion is advised. It is hard for me to believe, fathom it, stomach it, think about it, that 1999 was 25 years ago. It almost makes me sick to my stomach. 1999, late 1999, was the time that I moved to Omaha, Nebraska, from where I was living. I was living in a place that was kind of the midpoint between Des Moines and Omaha, and I got involved with the local music scene in Omaha. But I quickly found who some of my favorite bands from Omaha and the surrounding areas were. I've talked about it on past podcasts about what the music scene was like in Omaha, Nebraska in the early part of the millennium. There's a line that I have actually quoted on this podcast before, and that line is, "A critic is a critic for a reason." I still quote it to this day, and I am very proud to welcome my friend David Fairbanks from the band Pomeroy, Lost Wax, and his new project, Lopan Banks. He's got a mixtape coming out called Pretty Good Rapper on Friday, July 26th in Kansas City at the Truman. Dave, how the heck are you, man?
What's up, man? That was a fantastic intro there. I love it. Quoting one of the songs and everything.
Well, I seriously do drop it. I seriously do drop that line. I think people tend to live in the comment section in the social media world that we live in now. And who would have known back then? And that's kind of a good start off question. Did you ever imagine that you were writing such prolific things back in 1999, 2000, 2001?
Oh, man. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know, that first album, and by the way, before I get into that, I have to set the record straight. I love that line too. I can't take credit for it. That's not mine. That's Matt. And it's I give him credit where credit is due, but I do love that line. And it is true. A critic is a critic for a reason. You can kind of fill in the blanks after that. But when we were doing that first album, Matt and I started writing music in 97 together. And when we recorded that album was 2 years later in 99, after we had met Chris and Dean and kind of started everything. But you would laugh so hard if you could be a fly on the wall back then when we're putting it all together, because no, there was not a ton of thought put into anything. I mean, I always tried to put a lot of thought into what I was doing with my rhymes, and the content and the hidden meanings and entendres, double entendres and whatnot. But we were just young dudes looking to have fun and make music together. And never in our wildest dreams did we think that, by 2024, 2025 and beyond, we would still have people listening to it, taking it to heart, quoting it. We're just all so lucky to have been able to do this and make that kind of an impact on anybody, let alone the ones who still, call themselves fans of the band.
That was a really crazy time because I think about my music fandom and how it was all over the place. It still is. And I think that's kind of the earmark of any musician. It's like, you never know what you're going to listen to on any given day. And the 90s in particular seemed like it was just, you could throw about anything together and it would make sense. And then once we crossed into the millennium, the way that marketing was done, everything got recompartmentalized by genre again, which is kind of weird. It's kind of, to me, that was kind of a step backward. But I say all that because I think about us in our youth and how we did express ourselves and those avenues that we had. And not to be like repeating Rabbit or anything, but there's a lot more knowledge than we give ourselves credit for in our current lives. I go back and I listen to some of my albums that I'm like, oh man, that sucked back in the day. And then I go back and listen to it now and I'm like, man, that was a really witty line. Do you find yourself going back and listening to some of the old Pomeroy material and just surprising yourself?
Oh man, it's for so long, it's been a constant pendulum swing, and depending on how long it's been or what frame of mind I'm in or whatever, I've either hated and despised everything we ever did, or I've fallen all the way back in love with it and can't understand why it didn't just massively destroy everyone's face and we're the biggest rock stars in the world, to right around probably where reality actually sat, which is, I'm very proud of the product still. I think it holds up all these years later. I think a big part of why it holds up is because you can kind of see where we were coming from. All of our stuff was very, I thought, thoughtful, emotionally driven. Not every lyric, not every song was, quote unquote, thoughtful. I don't know that, Roboflow was about just getting up and smashing faces and rocking out. But that's what we wanted to do with it. I think that every musician goes through it. The second you get done with something and you record, at least the way we were, is we would love it up until we put it on wax, or we put it on tape, or we put it on CD. Then the second it is permanent, we walk away from it and we're just like, oh my God, we should have done this. We should have done that. Why did I make these changes? The people who listen to it have no clue the internal strife that is constantly going on with what you're putting together. I guess the only difference between all of that, the Pomeroy years, between what I've been doing with Lopan Banks is, I haven't really felt that a lot. Probably because there hasn't been enough time that's gone by where I'm just like, oh, I'm over it. I absolutely hate it. But I purposely take breaks from it, and I go back and I hear it again with fresh new ears, and I'm just like, all right, that's the way I felt when we first finished it. Because your ears can get dead and tired of hearing it, and every single millisecond of every single note and every single breath you took, and you put on the magnifying glass, and that gets unhealthy, and you just got to kind of let it go and be okay with it.
That's really, man, that's poignant, because I just watched a video today, and it was these actors. It was Ryan Reynolds interviewing Hugh Jackman interviewing Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds was talking about his anxiety and how he has used it as a tool to fuel his creativity, because he becomes his own worst critic, because he's not only viewing things in the moment of creating it, but he's viewing it from the purview of being in the audience. Do you think that maybe some of the relaxation that you're feeling doing the Lopan Banks project is because you're not worried about letting anybody else other than yourself down? Because it is a solo endeavor. It is, you've got to answer for you. I think about that very similarly in the podcasting world, making that transition from being a musician to a podcaster. Like, I am doing the best by my guest, and I'm going to try and do the best by myself. But at the end of the day, I'm the guy that I have to answer to. Do you feel a similar way?
Absolutely, man. There is, and it's all give and take. There's an exceptional amount of freedom that I have gotten and a different kind of satisfaction from writing and performing and recording music on my own or as a solo artist than I got from Pomroy, because the anxiety in the Pomroy, I wouldn't call it anxiety, but and you know what it's like when you're in a band. First and foremost, if you've had any kind of success, you guys have found a way to work together. You've found a way to be okay with each other's faults, to celebrate each other's gifts and things like that. And what it kind of becomes, at least with us, because we were tight as you can get and still call all these guys my best friends. You worry about letting them down. You worry about carrying your own bucket of water. And man, when you got guys like Matt Barone in your band who can play that guitar better than anybody I've ever played music with and comes up with the most brilliant ideas, there's that kind of friendly, brotherly competitiveness where it's like, God, I got to make sure I come correct on this, because I can't not be as good as everybody else in this band. So whether we actually recognized it or not at the time, I think there was constantly this edging towards the top that we were doing to each other. And that's all healthy and that's all good. But yeah, you don't want to be the guy that is the weak link. And whether you admit it or not, I think we all kind of go through that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of crazy because then when you're actually in the writing process, and I know this was just my experience, especially with some of my later projects, when you're in the writing process, you start questioning who you're writing the song for at the end of the day, especially when you're working with more skilled guitarists or more skilled bass players or, a really good rhythm section. You're like, okay, are you playing for the song or are you playing for the other musicians in the room? Because those are two totally different things sometimes. And that can create a little bit of competitiveness and a little bit of internal strife whenever you're trying to put something together.
So my take on that is right in line with Rick Rubin, which is the second that you start creating music as a product for other people with them in mind first, you've lost the art aspect.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, even in Pomeroy, there were some things that we did that I think maybe had more of a focus on that. Like instead of focusing on what it was we were trying to do and the idea, maybe there are a few times where we thought, oh, this would go over really well. I don't know if there was necessarily everybody would agree in the band that that's what happened, but I certainly felt that way at times. And the most fulfilled I've ever been in music, I think the most fulfilled a human being can ever feel is taking what they feel in their heart and their soul and their mind or whatever, bearing it all, putting it into this art form. And granted, there's a certain amount of it where you want to try and make it as cool as possible. And, you don't purposely put stuff together, people won't like, but absolutely everything from your soul. And then people react to it and then they connect with it and then they become fans. I've always told everybody, better than any drug, better than any drink, better than anything ever, hands down, no question, is what you get when you step out on stage and there's 600 people in front of you and they're going insane. The exact same feeling is when you put a piece of art together, like an album or a song or whatever, and people really connect with it and they've got every single lyric memorized and they say that, they still play it for their kids and they put it in the car when they're going to work in the morning. That for me is about the peak of human existence.
I love that. It holds up too. It holds up well because I've done all of those things. I've listened to it in the car on a drive to cheer myself up. I've played it for my kids. My daughter is a fantastic musician herself now, and she's kind of starting to experience the band life. So yeah, it's a great thing. We kind of jumped in to the middle portion of the story, but let's take a few steps back. Pomeroy's first demo was done in 1997. You and Matt did it in Long Beach, California, and kind of explain the genesis of that journey of Pomeroy to Lost Wax to Lopan Banks. And let's focus on Pomeroy for a few minutes because, being an Omaha, Lincoln guy, there's going to be a lot of local people that are going to be listening to this, sir. So let's take that Wayback Machine back and let's talk about how Pomeroy came together and ended up in Nebraska.
Well, first and foremost, I will tell you, although the story starts somewhere else and is presently somewhere else, it is undeniable that a huge part of how I feel about Pomeroy and how I feel about music in general, and just the years of my life that I've enjoyed the most, had everything to do with Omaha, Nebraska. It is my adopted hometown. I still have family who live there. We only lived there for a year, but Omaha pulled us in, wrapped its arms around us, and it's just, I can't think of a better place in my head. Just the times on stage and the people we met, recording at the Ranch Bowl, all that. So we'll get into some of that, but back to your question. And I guess I'll also say, I mentioned this to you earlier, I actually wrote a song earlier this year for Pomroy called Feeling Like I'm in Omaha. And, yes. I really like it. The guys like it. I think that's kind of a future thing that when we actually get around to doing a new album, which hopefully will be in the next couple of years. Can't say enough about that town. And obviously it's the people. We'll never forget that. But if you want to go back to the beginning, it all started at K-State in 1994 when I met Matt Marone as a freshman. It started in a weird place in a fraternity house. We were both fraternity pledges in the same house. And my first impression of Matt was him with an acoustic guitar sitting out on the deck playing for everybody. And obviously fantastic guitar player. But, I'm 18 years old and I think I'm cool too. And I was just like, show off, that dude, he's not that cool, whatever. Instantly, though, became best friends. And then we both had musical background. I had been doing music and performing since I was a little kid. He's obviously very talented. So we got elected as the song social chairman of the house, which basically our job was to come up with arrangements and songs and stuff that we would put together and go and serenade other sorority houses to get them to want to do parties with us. And I think I told you, kind of lame in hindsight, but at the time was like the dopest thing ever because like we got all this attention and all these girls were like, who are these guys? We put it all together. So that led to us, talking like, man, we should do something, and at the time, this was the mid 90s, 311 had gotten big and we liked a lot of the same music, a lot of the same hip hop, and we always kind of tossed around this idea of doing something. Well, the opportunity presented itself in 97 because Matt's mom's brother has a studio in Long Beach. And he invited us out. So we went out and re-recorded four songs, 4 or 5. And the original one, it was the very original Summer Night, the original Bodies in Tune, the original Played, and maybe Turn Your Head. I'm not sure. But we recorded it to tape in 97, came back to K-State and started shopping it to people. Meaning that just means playing it for our friends at parties. Not like actually shopping it. But then we met Dean. Dean actually came over. I had moved out of the fraternity house. Dean came over to the house because he had some friends that were trying to pledge. At the time, Matt was the president, and Matt's roommate was a bass player. So Dean had come over, saw a bass sitting around, and picked it up and starts playing it. And Matt from the fraternity house calls me, and he totally recreates the scene from Back to the Future where Chuck Berry's cousin,
Marvin.
Marvin Berry. And, Michael J. Fox is out there ripping it. And Matt puts the phone up. He goes, that sound we've been looking for? Well, listen to this. And he puts it up, and D just like, and I was just like, who is that? And he's like, oh, dude, I'll talk to him. We'll set up a thing, whatever. He's so cool. I was like, all right, cool. So we set up a time to jam with him. Dean had already made friends with Chris Davis because he was rocking around the student union a couple weeks before and saw Chris pull in his old like Oldsmobile or whatever and had a Pearl drum sticker in the back. Anybody who knows Dean just walks up to him and is just like, hey, you play drums? And Chris is like, yeah. He's like, you want to jam sometime? And they're like, yeah. And it's, kind of, did we become best friends kind of thing? So Dean had already met Chris. We got together, and the first time we ever met up, the four of us, was over at Dean's house, and we ran through some covers and some originals. It was like legit movie magic, like absolute. We were all like, you guys feeling this? Like, this is amazing. And that right there, that initial spark, that initial, like, we all started thinking, oh my God, this could be something actually. Like this, we could do something. This could be great. And before long, within a month or two, we had put a little set together. We started playing, fraternity houses and local bars. We're playing shows in 98. And then we get into 99. We start getting asked to go out of town. Matt and I skip our college graduation at K-State to go play our first theater show in Denver, open it up for a metal, like a metalcore rap rock band called Blister 66, who we ended up staying friends with for years afterwards.
Yeah, I remember those guys. Those guys were great.
Yeah, fantastic dudes. We spent a lot of time on the road with them, and they weren't exactly like us, but we really clicked. Anyway, that's when we go in and record Inside the Shine in 1999, and we take those original few songs that we had, and then we put in the other ones like Rebound and Roboflow and whatnot. We go to where it really broke, where the love affair with Omaha started, was we had got into Penny Pitcher Night at the Ranch Bowl, and I don't know how that initial show happened, but we did. And there were actually a lot of people there, had no clue who we were, but we got on. And we were like, dudes, this is a cool club. It's an opportunity. Before we went up there, we were researching the Ranch Bowl and kind of figured out the history of it. It's like, we got to come correct. And we felt like we destroyed it that night. And we came back the next time because we got invited back. And there was a line out the door. We were like, oh my God, it's like you fish in a barrel in this place, like, wow, are we that good, or are they just that starved for it? And later found out in no way has Omaha ever been starved for good music. So we were pretty proud of ourselves. And that's when Eric Markle, who had brought us back, pitched us to his dad, Matt. And before long, within a couple months, we had a record deal with Get Go Records to do Cocoon Club. And on July 4th of July, I remember it vividly, we moved up to Omaha. And I remember it because as I'm driving into town, and I'm pulling into Omaha, I'm watching all the different fireworks shows going on around everywhere. And I was like, this is cool. They're celebrating the fact that we're coming into town and we're going to live here. But that's how it started. And then, the rest, or if you don't, I'll fill in the blanks. But, we've only got limited amounts of time.
So what's funny is, you remember before we started recording, I was talking about how, and you were also chiming in about how we can't remember what we ate for lunch yesterday, but there's some weird things about dates and times and things. That Penny Pitcher Night, you guys were playing with a band called Shutterbug. I remember that. I also remember that 4th of July too. What's crazy about that 4th of July, the Ranch Bowl had a 2-night show that was Cottonmouth Kings, Zebrahead, and this little band that nobody had ever heard of was opening the show, and they were called Linkin Park.
Yep, I remember.
Those kind of anomalous things always happened at the Ranch Bowl, and I think that was part of the magic, especially of that era, which kind of leads to some of the questions I said I was going to throw at you. Some rumor, some conjecture. Maybe you can clear some things up. One of my favorite Pomeroy shows of that era was this last-minute show that you guys got thrown on with Blue October. I remember it because you guys opened the show with this medley of Back in Black tying into Roboflow. And I thought that was the most genius transition I had seen. It was so well executed. But there was a special reason for that show and that last minute positioning, or at least that's what the rumor always was. You guys had some label interest for a period of time, did you not?
We definitely did. Some major label interest. And
yes.
Yes. So I'll start by saying yes. And then you tell me what you want to know.
Okay. So there's a few different rumors. One was you guys were in the negotiation process with the label at one point in time, and that you guys were trying to, in essence, more or less get Go as an imprint on a major label. Is that true or not?
That's absolutely true.
Okay, so yeah, I thought it was. I thought it was. I also heard you guys were also really close another time with signing with a major label, but major labels doing major label things, they wanted to remove some of the hip hop element out of Pomeroy and water you down to what Maroon 5's sound was at the time, which ironically, Maroon 5 started injecting hip hop years later. Is that also true?
So the general idea is there, but it wasn't. The second time might have been Maroon 5, but the primary incidents that we still talk about to this day, like, on the Pick a Path book, if you would have chosen differently, where would your reality end up? And it's funny that you mentioned Linkin Park, because that's at a time when that first single that they had was just destroying everything. Right. And they came in, wined and dined us, took us out. This is while we were recording Cocoon Club, I think. And I'm not sure if we had finished it yet, or we were somewhere. Maybe we had recently finished, or we were in the process. But they came out and they were like, we love you guys. We love Roboflow. We love this song. But we want to get rid of everything else, and we want you to make us 10 Roboflows. We want you to be, Linkin Park is big, and we want you to do this. And we basically had the ability to say yes and say, okay, we're gonna go down that road for you, and we're gonna take your money up front. We're gonna get plastered everywhere and all that stuff. I mean, we heard all of the promises and the appetizing things. And it was really difficult for us at the time. Right. I mean, here we are, only, a few years after really starting, kind of in its infancy. Yeah, I mean, technically, if our first demo was 97, it's already 2000, 2001, and we've got this opportunity. Ultimately, we sat down and we said, look, if we're getting this opportunity now, we're going to get this opportunity later. Spoiler alert, we didn't. But the point is that we still, to this day, are very happy with that decision, because we started doing it because of what we wanted to do. If we'd have become a carbon copy of Linkin Park and had to do 10 Roboflows, people wouldn't like Roboflow as much as they like Roboflow.
Right.
And who Pomeroy is always going to have the hip hop element. And more importantly, I think what we were going to lose were a lot of the other artistic elements that Matt brought to the table. A lot of the, the harmonies and the My Paradise type songs, or the Cut Ain't Sewn, or the She's Dangerous, is they wanted it to be straight up Linkin Park, which, nothing against Linkin Park ever. Obviously, fantastic band, and I get down on their stuff, but that just wasn't us, Right. It's kind of the same deal when people say, oh, if you've heard 311, you've heard Pomeroy. Now, I think that's a little closer, obviously, but we always thought, we used to say Pomeroy sounds like Pomeroy. We've got different elements. We've got different things going on, but there's nobody else out there. I still have never heard any other band out there who ever did it the way that we still do it and the way that we used to do it. But yes, absolute truth. We decided to take the artist stand and say no to your record deal and no to your idea. And we want to remain, Pomeroy. And down the road, if you guys like us now, you'll like us later. They did never come back with the same type of offer, though. And I'm glad. I am. It's funny to joke about, like, man, where would we be now? But I also wouldn't have all this, and I probably wouldn't be doing a solo project, and I wouldn't have had the opportunity to, enjoy other pieces of life, and we can get into the other things that I do, but I might not be married and have 2 wonderful kids. And, it's choices are choices for a reason, and you can't dwell on them too much once you made them.
Right. You don't want to unintentionally create a butterfly effect. And it does kind of tie into this Lopan Banks project, because you cited Tribe Called Quest and Jurassic 5 in your email, both groups that I absolutely love. And I think if you would have gone down that Roboflow 10 times road, you would have lost that as well. You would have lost the funk, the neo soul, like the painting behind your head of your Mount Rushmore, you know, like the essence of what Pomeroy was and what made Pomeroy great. With some of that stuff happening during that time and that whirlwind that was occurring, I know it felt really treacherous at times about when you guys were going to get Cocoon Club done, because you had a bunch of releases set and then you had to change the release date and change the release date again. Did some of the business outside of just recording have an influence on the recording at that time?
I think so. I think it's like anything in life, it's never just one thing. It's a lot of different stuff. But yeah, you know, the move, and you can hear it in the music, the move from Inside the Shine to Cocoon Club. Cocoon Club was more of a business project. We still love it to this day. Still, you know, it's still Pomeroy, but we had Matt Markle invested. I mean, we didn't work for a year. I mean, he paid for everything. He paid for instruments. He paid for gas in our vehicles. He paid rent. We would go to the Ranch Bowl and raid the kitchen like we freaking own the place, you know. And I remember one day, you know, he gave Eric the credit card or whatever, and we went to whatever music store it was at the time because we needed a bunch of new stuff, you know, new amps, new guitars, I got like clong yaws that I'd never even used before. I was like, I'm a hand percussionist, I'm going to buy this, you know. But because of a lot of that, we had a little bit of pressure on us that we needed to deliver. The other thing is that I think we got a little tight. We got a little uptight because here we are getting interviewed, you know, by Universal and Sony and whoever it was that we're talking to at the time. And, you know, we've got potential record label contracts larger than what we've already signed. Our shows are getting bigger. The name is getting out there. And I think all of us kind of collectively tightened up. You know, maybe worried a little too much about perfecting the product as opposed to making it be what it was supposed to be. And so that took some time. We had to rethink a few things. We redid a few things. I know we even changed some slight arrangements and even some lyrics between Inside the Shine and Cocoon Club. So I think the culmination of all those things definitely put us a little behind schedule. But there's nothing that I would ever really regret about any of that. In fact, we probably, looking back, would have loved to spend a whole nother year there living out of that place and hanging with everybody. We all became incredible bowlers, you know, and we'd go play sand volleyball when we wanted. And, you know, oh, by the way, there's a fantastic music venue right here where any night of the week you can go see somebody amazing. So, I mean, those are the golden years.
Yeah, that's my running joke is like, I'll be standing in the sporting goods department of that Walmart that's there, and I'll say, yeah, Pomeroy is going to go on at any point in time now.
Yep. We'll be on soon. Slight delay.
Oh my gosh. So what's funny, I love the fact that you brought up the bowling, because I remember when you guys were in the thick of recording, there was just some random super late night, a show was over, and you guys were recording really late, and you grabbed a bunch of us from the bowling alley to clap for Elevate.
Dude, I tell you what, Pomeroy is a sucker for the group clap, man. We are a sucker for the group snap or the group. I mean, I love doing group stuff. And there's a lot of, not to turn it away from there, a lot of grouping vocals on the Lopan Banks record and some of the, you know, call and answer and choruses and stuff. But from day one, we always tried to do stuff like that. I remember we were recording our first record, Inside the Shine, with Rob Reed back. And who still to this day, he mixed my Lopan Banks album and he's still done stuff for us to this day. But I remember we were sitting in a circle out in the big room and we had come up with this idea where we were going to do a waterfall group clap and it wasn't all claps. It's like somebody snap, next person would clap, next person like hit the tambourine, next person, you know. And of course, I'm sure we were very, inspired at the time. But that didn't seem to work, you know, but we always loved and even on what is that vocal from the Identity record. That thing is full of group stuff. And so we are suckers for that. And I do remember that. And that's amazing. That's so much fun. Hey, we've all been drinking, partying, hanging out. Let's go in the studio and do something. If it sucks, we'll cut it. But if it's great, man,
right.
Not only do you have something cool, but you got a good story.
So let's move past Omaha. Pomeroy did a couple of releases after you guys moved back to Kansas City or moved down to Kansas City. What were those experiences like in contrast, without focusing too much on Omaha, because your story kept evolving to a point, but so did the industry, so did social media, so did pop culture in general. There were several different iterations, different styles of music that were kind of captivating the world's attention at the time. How did the releases that follow Cocoon Club impact you personally, and what's your purview on all of that?
Sure. I think that's a great question. And I've thought about it a little bit, but not enough to have a canned response. So what I'll tell you is when I think about each individual Pomeroy record and kind of how we got there, I feel like more than the outside forces, more than the industry, more than music at the time, more than whatever, I think each individual record is a pretty good, look in the mirror, direct reflection of what we were either going through at the time, what we were feeling at the time, whether we felt like we had either grown up or moved past something, or maybe, because you got to understand, when we first started the band, Chris was like 18 years old, 18, 19 years old. He couldn't even get into the clubs that we were playing. And we've gone from there to, all of us have kids at this point. All of us are either married or have been married. Actually, all are currently married. Some of us twice, but one of us actually. But it's you go through these different stages, and so Inside the Shine is a direct reflection of the college years, man. That was the culmination of 97 through 99, and us getting started. We were just kind of throwing it out there, and absolutely no fear of anything, no real concerns about what it needed to be. It was just what it was. Cocoon Club was still that, and then it had the extra elements of, my God, other people are looking at us. We got a chance to do big things, and we signed this record label, and, we're doing all that. Identity is one of my favorite records because it was on the back end of all of that. We had moved back to Kansas City, and Kansas City's got a great music scene. We love it. It's way different than Omaha, and we felt like we had kind of really established a good network of friends there. But we came back, we basically came back home, and we were still, that was at the point where we really started touring absolutely religiously, because we were still on Gecko Records, and we were going out. We were, that's when our RV broke down out in Seattle. We were going coast to coast. But Identity was like, 2002 to 2000, because hold on for a second, we did the DVD in 2005, and so Identity was before that, 2002, 2003. That was, we kind of stripped things down. We didn't want it to be as, for example, just like the song Identity, a lot more singing, a lot more falsetto vocals, a little more intricate. That was just what we were feeling at the time. Although I will tell you, some of the songs on that album do get. And that was really the first opportunity for us to have Tyson shine, because on Cocoon Club, we started with John Edsel, who was our original keyboard player. And then before we finished, John left. And to this day, still miss him and hope he's doing all right, wish him the best. But we had to get a fill-in for him, which was Shag. And that was a guy that we'd met here in Kansas City. And there were still some keyboard parts left to be played. And he got in and he did, a couple of those parts on Cocoon Club. But then he was with us for, that period of time between Cocoon Club and Identity. And then Tyson comes on board and just gives us that extra lift and that extra tangent that we didn't have in all areas. Showmanship, versatility of musician, just shredder of both the keyboard player, guitarist. I mean, there's not an instrument that the guy can't play. And he can sing his ass off too. And so he was just like a plug and play, like, oh my God, did this just get better kind of thing? Wow. Right. And that was the first opportunity we had for him. The DVD we did with the EP Live at the Blue Note was the Road Warriors, we'd been on the road for a long time and we were just like pulling the trigger and there was nothing we couldn't do. And we kind of wanted to show that piece off, and we were playing to big crowds everywhere. And then the New Reflection CD was a big change. It was a marked change from what we had done before. And a lot of that, again, has to do with what different people were going through at the time, especially Matt. Matt's always been the one of the most principal songwriters in the band, the most gifted musically and idea-wise, I would say, to the day I die, out of all of us. But that was a very macaron heavy record, and I love it. I absolutely love all of the songs on that record. And, we had our hip-hop stuff, but we really tried to push the envelope. We did that Billy the Id song, where we got way more in depth with different layers of, entendres and hidden meanings and, And that song was very personal to me because it had to do with some stuff that I was going through. And so I think more than outside influences, every single thing we've ever done has everything to do with what we're going through at the time, which is why I'm really glad we've kind of, we've always stuck together. We've always stayed together. We've always remained best friends. I'm really working on them to do that next big Pomeroy album where there's talks of doing like a full-blown reunion tour, either late 2025 or 26. And I keep reminding him, I'm like, hey, I wrote this song. We got to do, I've been working on all this stuff, but I'm relentless at times, and I think I've ground them all down. And now they're coming back, and I think I've got everybody excited, and I'm super, super grateful and appreciative that they're going to come down and help me throw this big party for my release. And to that end, anybody that's coming to that to see Pomeroy, there's going to be more than enough Pomeroy for those people coming just to see Pomeroy, to not let anybody be disappointed. Obviously, the focus is going to be the Lopan Banks aspect and the release and whatnot, but I couldn't have Pomeroy help throw the show without a heavy dose of Pomeroy. And so there's going to be that. I just kind of finished up the run of show. There's a lot going into it. I'm so excited and appreciative that they're going to help me do it.
I love that, dude. That last album, the New Reflection album, I love the production on that.
It's fantastic.
Like, start to finish. Did it ever cross your mind? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. To record some of the OG songs a third time after that album dropped? Did that ever be like, man, the production was so good on this. Maybe we do need to revisit My Paradise or something along those lines?
We've always talked about, in fact, Matt and I were on the phone not long ago talking about not that exact idea, but going back and doing music videos for the old songs. And that's one thing we really regret that we never really did, is do the full-on music video. In this day and age, with the technology that you got, it's pretty commonplace to, let's go shoot a video. Well, I got an iPhone 15, Dude, when we started this out, we had one, but when Matt and I started it, cell phones weren't even really a thing. Nobody had laptops. Right. The internet was nothing. And we're from the grassroots, play until you die and then build it from the inside out. But once cell phones were a thing, we had one cell phone, and it was an entire band cell phone. So if our parents wanted to get a hold of us, they would call the one. We had to take turns using it, a little Samsung flipper.
Right.
But I think it would be awesome to do that. I would love to go back and re-record kind of like an anthology, man, and do like maybe a section of new Pomeroy songs that we've written, in the last couple of years, or that I've written, or that Matt wants to write soon, or stuff that we've been throwing around, plus maybe re-record some old ones, plus do like music videos or something that, at this point for us, it's not about, making it big on social media and having the Pomeroy career. It's about the people that are already here. And if more people jump on, great. But it's kind of like, that's when I think it's okay to start doing stuff with your audience. Because,
yes.
I feel like if I write with the idea that we're going to put something together that all the people who would usually come to Ranch Bowl shows would love to hear, then I think it's okay, because it's like you're still writing for yourself, because we're all kind of the same thing. And then all those people like you and all the people that went in to do the clapping of the hands and stuff like that, I feel like that's me too. And I would love to do that. I would love to do that.
Yes. And that's great, because this kind of brings it to the next phase of everything, because that parasocial relationship world that we live in is very real. And it is a full 360 degrees audio video experience. I talk to a lot of younger bands, and younger bands are less concerned about record deals these days and more concerned about building community. Like, that's why social media is, like, for all the ways that we want to vilify all the ugliness that social media has created, from an artistic standpoint, there are some really great merits to it. And that community building and that world building, almost like its own little MCU, if you will, is really important. And it's great, because how I started following you again, or found you again through social media, was through your project Lost Wax. And Lost Wax does a lot with videos and interacting in that sense, in that essence. How fun has that been for you?
Oh man, that has been the ride of a lifetime. I mean, again, I probably said it, I'll say it 100 more times, because I truly believe it. I'm so lucky to have been a part of these successful, fun, fulfilling, entertaining projects. And that started in 2009, like right as Pomroy was like, okay, we're not going to tour anymore. We're not going to put out another album, like 2009. Cause, that's when Chris Davis and I started Lost Wax, because at the time, Dean was out in Florida at Full Sail. He went to recording school. Matt had already moved to Chicago, and he had gotten married, and he'd start family out there. Tyson, oh man, I never know where Tyson is at any given day. You look at his social media, he's in Scandinavia, and he's playing with Vixen somewhere in Australia.
I was just going to say, Tyson has kind of become the Forrest Gump of 80s hair metal.
Dude, that dude is riddle wrapped within an enigma and frosted and amazing, exciting shit. I love that dude so much. He's really good. But I guess my point is, I can't remember where he was at the time. He might have still been in Kansas City. I don't think he had yet made the move to Nashville. But in 2009, Chris and I just kind of started this thing. Hey, we've been playing music together since, 98. We can't just quit cold turkey. Let's do something that we could go, do it like the basement of Lucky Brew Grill on a weekend night and get some people out. So it started as this project that we called Emergency 6. And we called it that because we were still living in the house that the Pomroy guys and I lived in Kansas City, Missouri, and the address was 9116. So we called it Emergency 6. And it was me and him and our other new roommate, Leslyn Allman, one of the best female vocalists I've ever played with, and friend, went to high school with Matt at Sumner Academy in Wyandotte. And we started this little thing. That then turned into Lost Wax, because Dean saw that we were doing it. So he got in. He was the original bass player. And Tyson even got in and was doing guitar and keys. Dean actually came up with the name Lost Wax. And we were like, oh, that's amazing. We adopted it. And then slowly Dean stopped playing. Tyson stopped playing. And it was back down to just me and Chris. And then we added on who we called the OGs of Lost Wax. Me and Chris, John Goolsby, and Lindsay Emmett, and Brandon Gherkin. We've been doing that since 2009. What's fantastic about that is that thing has exploded over the years.
Yes.
It's become bigger and more successful. I mean, and Chris is responsible for all of it, because I went back to law school in 2009. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But I had no time to, we may have started the project together. And we had thought, hey, we're going to build this thing together or whatever. And I just got so busy. I think the writing was on the wall. He's like, hey, man, what if I just take this over and run with it? And I was like, please do. Because I can't, I'm back in school full time. I got, she wasn't my wife at the time, but my, girlfriend who I'm married to. And we've been together for 24 years now. But and I was like, dude, you just run with it. That dude destroyed it. It is now such a huge thing. What started with just 2 guys that turned into 5 people is now a musician stable of like 60 plus. You can put 3 or 4 or 5. I've even seen weekend nights where they've put like 6 or 7 versions of the band together, all at the same time in different places. Always got versions of the band traveling around the country. I mean, it is the real deal. And now these days, I just kind of sit back and watch it. You know, there's constantly new blood and new musicians coming in. You know, there was a time when we had started it out where I was good for about 8 shows every month. And that was always going to be every Friday, Saturday. And in months where there were 5 weekends, it'd be 10, 5 weekends. 5 weekends. That's right. There'd be at least 10 shows a month. Sometimes we played on Sundays, primarily, wedding gigs, high-end weddings, but we started out playing clubs. Now you can get into Lost Wax and be a primary, musician, and you can make a very good living doing only music. And it's just something Chris has done such a fantastic job of building. I mean, we were the house band for the NFL draft in 20.
I was just going to say that.
You know, who gets to do that? I mean, it's fantastic. And although I wasn't a part of the group that did this, they just did, and they were promoting the filming of it. They were the house. We, without me, was the house. I could, I'll ride the coattails or whatever. Oh yeah, I was there. No, I wasn't. I clearly wasn't. But they're the house band for this reality show that HBO Magnolia is doing called Second Chance Stage or Second Stage Act, Second Chance, that they just filmed, that's coming out in November. And that thing comes out in November. That's going to be in your face every single episode. Lost Wax is the house band and performing. They got 3 celebrity judges. And Chris was even one of the coaches. And he's going to have all this FaceTime where he's trying to put together people's stuff. And Shelby Winfrey, who is a female vocalist in Lost Wax, is one of the other coaches. I mean, big time stuff. And just to think that it started with, hey, let's do some singing and hip hop. We almost called the project Hip Hop Laptop because we had Chris's drums and then tracked everything else. And then I'm rapping and then I'd play the congas a little bit. And that has turned into this. I mean, it's insane that I will be able to go to my deathbed someday and say that I was part of that, helped create it, and then watched it just blow the doors off. I can't give Chris enough credit for what he's done.
That's amazing. I love all of this because it culminates into how driven you are as an individual. As you had mentioned in the origin story of Lost Wax, that you became a lawyer, like started a family, like made yourself busy. You've got your hands in a lot of things and you're executing at a very high level. What was the most fulfilling part of that era and that area of your life? You were obviously, had the fuel of the past history with Pomeroy, this Lost Wax project taking off, but you were going to school to be a lawyer is no easy task, sir. Like,
it is not. It's no easy task. It's no cheap task, especially if you are already 10 years older than any incoming, first year law student, So I guess to encapsulate it, it was something I always thought I could do. It's something I was always told I could do. It was never, ever anything I wanted to do. Because I grew up, my father is an attorney. He's actually just now retiring this year. But he practiced very consistently from the day I was born. Got a picture, 1976, and yes, I will date myself, after I was like 2 months old, in him in his cap and gown, graduating from law school with me in his hand. I'm this little bean, with me in his arm. So I grew up with him as an attorney for a father, and he was a fantastic one, well respected by everybody in the community, in the area. He went on to do a lot of amazing things. There's, if we had more time, there's some fantastic trial stories I've got of when I was a kid and it was in the 80s. And I don't know if, anybody, I won't get into that. But just,
we'll have to do that for a future episode, friends.
Right. Yes. It'll break into a tangent we can't come back from. But my point was, I never wanted to be an attorney because my dad was. And I always knew I was destined to be on a stage somewhere or to be some type of person with influence through my art. And I don't know that I ever kind of made those connections as a kid. As a kid, it was probably just like, I love writing poetry. I love making songs. You know, I love the Beastie Boys. I love Run DMC. I wrote, you know, I got introduced to rap writing at basketball camp in 4th grade and, you know, started writing raps and all that. And I just always thought, I got the bug. This is what I'm going to do. I'm always going to do something like this. So I never, ever gave it an option. But as on the kind of backside of Pomroy, when, you know, I've already been in a long-term relationship, I think I put my now wife, then girlfriend through a lot over the years, and she had stuck with me, and I was waking up in the back of the bus. And even though I was still living the life and loving it, you let those thoughts start creeping in. It's like, you know, I wasn't old at the time by any means, but, you know, what's next? You know, what's next for me? And I had this kind of epiphany where I was kind of scared that, like, I knew I had all these abilities, but, like, who am I if I'm not the guy from Pomroy? You know, who am I if I'm not David Fairbanks, the rapper or whatever? And if I don't get a ride around in this RV or this bus and I don't get to do, who am I? What value do I have? What do I give to the world or the people around me? And I secretly, without telling my father, because I didn't want him to get excited, I secretly went and applied to law school at UMKC in 2008. And I went and kind of studied for the LSAT on the down low and whatnot and passed it and kind of rocked it, actually, and was like, oh, man, maybe I've got an aptitude for this. You know, I can talk well, but do I think I can do it? And I applied and I got rejected, man. They were just they were like, when'd you graduate? Oh, 10, 11 years ago. Okay. And what kind of grades did you get? What did you, you know, in 1999, what was your cumulative GPA, you know? And I think I didn't even have a 3.0. I was like a 2.9996 or something, you know, because I jerked around the last couple of years because I was so busy trying to get this band thing off the ground. So I went back and I took some classes. I took their advice. I went in and met with, I think, one of the deans at the time at admissions, and I was like, what do I need to do? Like, well, do this and this. So I went and I did some community service and I took some classes and I did all that. And then I reapplied and they accepted me in 2009. So that started my journey. And I walk in full time, you know, 10 years older than everybody else. And I already had a mortgage and we had cars and we had pets. We didn't have kids yet. And I was like, I don't want to take 6 years going back part time. So I went back full time for 3 years, took out maximum amount of federal student aid loans every year. And just to pay for it, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul and then deal with all this debt later, which just, by the time I got, you know, it just kept getting more, even though I wasn't borrowing money because I'm on an income-based repayment plan. And I basically mortgaged my financial future just so I could go and get that degree. And because the most fulfilling, I think what your question was, I have a tendency to ramble. I think what your question was, the most fulfilling thing about it, and it had everything to do with proving to myself that I was more than just the guy from Pomroy and that I could do other things with my life. And I could take aspects of what made me good in this job, being able to communicate with people and speak well and round out thoughts and be able to do that. You know, do I have what it takes to actually put the work in to study and learn the law and understand it? And really all law school is about learning to perform under the most immense pressure and retain knowledge and get used to the idea that when you've got lives and tremendous amount of, especially with what I do, assets and wealth and children and everything like that, do you have what it takes to put the work in and get it done and learn how to handle a billion different spinning plates? And even though I was 10 years older than everybody else, I have such best friends from law school that I met that will continue to be just as close to me as a lot of my former best friends that I'd either grown up with or even some of the guys in Pomroy. It's just this different sect. I just can't say enough about how gratified I was in being able to show myself that I could do that. And that was the best part of it.
That brings me to kind of a thought here, or a multi-tiered thought. There's a quote that I absolutely love, and it's, you have your entire life to write your first album. All right. So let's take that quote and set it to the side for just a moment. I view our lives as being seasons. Like, there is the inside the shine Dave. There is the cocoon club Dave. And you perfectly described that. I have several versions of myself too. And to be honest, on any given day, when I reflect upon that version, I might not know that guy anymore. So going back to that quote and bringing that quote back into the fold, it's almost like you have all of those experiences to lead you to this moment that you're at right now. And you talked about the community service and the things that you had to do so you could be accepted in the law school. Maybe that was a result of some of the empathy that you also learned as being an artist. And being an artist takes a great deal of humility. When you're on that stage, you can be as cocky as can be, but when you're off stage, you know, sometimes critiques hurt, and you have to learn how to deal with critiques. You have to learn how to deal with whenever you get praised and do things well. And maybe all of those things led to your success and this pathway of you becoming a lawyer, even if you didn't intend for it to.
Absolutely. Everything you said is perfectly spot on. And I guess what I would say is, and it still happens today, I would have never gotten to the point, like if I would have tried to go and apply to law school right out of college, if we didn't get signed by, get-go, and we didn't do all that, I would have failed miserably. I didn't have what it took. I didn't have the life experience. I didn't have the humility. I think in order to do anything significant, you got to be willing to look yourself in the eye and admit that you're not very good at something and you need to get better at it, or you need to change something about your life. And criticism only hurts when it's true, and I can take criticism all day from anybody, but what really gets you is the poignant little bit that somebody who you know and trust says to you, and you're like, damn it, that hurts, because I know, whether I want to admit it or not, that's true. That's absolutely true. But not letting that, get you down or set you back or whatever. Like, I'm a problem solver, man. Like, every day I get up and I like to solve problems. That's what my whole life has become in being an attorney. And I've got a very amazing practice. I'm very fulfilled by that. And there are aspects that are different. There are aspects that are the same between the two, because the way I practice law, I do try to make as much of it about art as I can. But life in general is about humility, common sense, and drive. And if you've got a little bit of talent there, I mean, you can do fantastic, amazing things. But like the pendulum swing again, it's like I feel like being a musician who in a position where I could write and record my own material, even with Pomroy, being able to have that outlet makes me a 10 times better lawyer than I would be if I didn't have that. And vice versa, because, if I didn't strap a suit and tie on every day and go to court multiple times a week, and, I do a lot of trial, I'm a litigator by nature, a lot of everything, actually. If I didn't get to do that, I wouldn't appreciate the other side of it as much as I do. It's the total yin and yang, and it sounds cheesy, but it sounds cheesy because most of the time that is not accomplishable by everybody. Not everybody gets that opportunity. And so I'm just so happy that and grateful and thankful that I get to be able to do that and be able to solve problems for people and help. And at the same time, be able to have this outlet that I have in creating this art and still be able to connect people that way. These days, I'm very satisfied because, at the end of the day, if it sucks and it's terrible and everybody hates it, I can't blame Matt or Chris or Dean or Tyson or anybody, that's all on me. And I love that.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if it really is as good as I think it is, which I do, and I'm not in any way trying to be arrogant at all. I just like it and I think it's a good product. Then I get to put my flag in that,
Yes.
But it's not just me. That's a good opportunity for me to plug the fact that the whole Lopan Banks project is a 3-headed monster. And that's me and 2 of my best friends in the world, and they happen to be brothers, Chris Wilson and Adam Wilson. They are guys that I've been loosely writing stuff and making stuff with for a number of years. And Adam has a studio in his house that they call Beat Lab, which we, religiously for years have been going over and doing stuff. Chris, his older brother, is the one who pitched the idea of Lopan Banks to me and said, look, dude, you've been working on this for so long. You have so many songs. You started recording solo project stuff in like 2005, and you've got, to what you said, you can take a lifetime to write your first album. I feel like that's the situation I'm in, because when we went and looked at it, I've got a whole removable hard drive here of stuff I just did in 2007, and every track on the album got recorded between 2020 and 2022. And so there's still a wealth in loads of stuff that I've got to work on, but he pitched it, they pitched it, we came up with the idea, and that's how it actually got done. Cause I've been just mindlessly recording stuff and saving it and being like, well, someday, but they made me, we'll get around to it. But that's how it kind of came to life.
I love that. My wife and I were on a drive, and spoiler alert, if you're just listening to this or watching this, Dave and I have a little bit of history. So Dave actually sent me an advanced copy of Lopan Banks, and I enjoyed the shit out of it, dude. Awesome. I love the opening and the closing, because I think the commentary from your parents is fantastic bookends to what happens in the middle.
Dude, it's I love every song and I love the finished product, but I love it because it came together at the very end because of those bookends.
Right.
And we struggled for a long time. Part of the reason, the songs in their current form have been there for a while. Mm-hmm. We kept struggling because we wanted to make it a mixtape. We wanted to make sure it could play from beginning to end without anything, and it's a complete thought. Of course, Spotify and iTunes and whatnot, they'll divide it into tracks. But, when you hear it, you'll see that there's really no beginning and end. And just the end of that song is where we decided to clip it in the beginning, because it all goes together. But, we had toyed around with an idea of this, kind of skits that kind of went all the way through. And, there was this idea where I was going to be driving around in my Ranchero listening to the radio, and the album comes on and we record. We tried a bunch of different ideas. And at the end of the day, none of it really felt genuine. It felt like, I'd be like, it's cool, but is it really me? Like, does it add to it? I really like these songs. I don't want us to just throw some shit in here because we think it's a cool idea or whatever. And I think this is actually another Chris Wilson idea where he was just like, man, we've always talked about this being just about you and whatever. And, what do you think about, because you always talk about how your parents have always supported you. What do you, maybe do some kind of a thing with them? And then that's what culminated. And we recorded it Thanksgiving last year when we were with them for Thanksgiving, sat down at the dining room table and did that brief little intro. And then I guess the story behind it is they hadn't heard the album yet. And so then we got back home and I sent it to them and they listened to it. So the bookend on the back is me calling them and interviewing them briefly about their take on what they thought. And by the time that came together, I was like, dude, that's it. I'm so glad we didn't force anything else. This is what we needed. And it just kind of came together. And so, And obviously it goes without saying, in my mind, my parents are the number one reason why I even am who I am today, why I've had the opportunity that I've had. They still support me in every single way. My dad always says, you never stop raising your kids. It's absolutely true. I'm 48-year-old now. I still feel when I talk to them like I'm the 10-year-old kid that just got back from basketball camp and wants them to listen to my new rap that I memorized, And so I felt like, what a better way to round this out. I can go back and listen to it years from now. They will be forever immortalized on this thing, and it's always going to mean a lot to me. And I like it even more because I think that comes through. Even if you don't know me, you don't know them, you can just kind of tell that it is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it adds a lot of heart, and it ramps up the first track really nicely. It's because the first track is danceable. Like, you talk about it being at like 95 BPM. It is just like that head nodding. I'm excited about what's about to come next. It's funny. My wife, it's my second wife. She has no connection to local music whatsoever. She didn't know me in the band days. Like, so her music taste, I'll tell you, we did a road trip one time and she had this CD that she burned off in high school. I kid you not, I can't make this up. It was called Jen's Cool Disc, and it had like Richard Marx and Nelson and like things we would ironically listen to back in the day just to be funny. So like her taste is all over the board. So I was kind of priming her. I'm like, I knew we were going to drive to where she's originally from in southeast Nebraska Saturday morning. So I played her some Pomeroy stuff, and I'm like, man, I used to love these guys, used to play shows with these guys, know these guys, fantastic guys. So I played her some Pomeroy stuff. I go, but Dave sent me his album last night. Whenever we make the drive down these rural roads, I want to just not talk. I just want to listen to this album. So I got to have that experience. I got to hear the intro, your parents, hear that first track, Take Off. The track about the erroneous text message was absolutely hilarious, because at first I'm like, I tilt my head like a dog and I'm like, what's going on here? And then by the time it was all said and done, I was chuckling and I'm actually laughing out loud. And then by the time the whole mix was over, hearing your dad's comment about the text message track made me laugh a second time. I was like, that was so clever. So clever. My wife, first thing she said, I really like that. And I'm like, what? You liked something I like? Yeah, it was like a huge win. So I think this mix, this album is really going to connect with people, Dave, whether, I know you made it for you and you made it for your team, but this is going to connect with audiences. And I think it's a lot for people to get excited about. Are you just excited to get this out into the world and see what's next for Lopan Banks?
Absolutely. And, I again, lucky, very lucky, to be in the position that I am, to be able to do this and not have it be something that I need to happen in order to survive. It's this level of freedom and comfort that, I know that, everything is going to be okay if it sucks, which makes me want it not suck so much worse. I really want people to connect with it and like it. But totally, I've matured enough emotionally and have done enough other things in my life to where if truly, I don't know, what's his name, Fontano or whatever, was like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard or whatever, they'd be like, all right, that's cool. That's fair. I'm going to keep on doing my thing. But what I really want and what the plan is to continue to do a number of these, because like I said, I've got a lot of stuff already either in the can or close to in the can, a lot of ideas, a lot of stuff that's already recorded. If I can get this to hit a little bit and get it to, generate some motion, some listeners, some viewers, whatever it is, then I'll feel way better about continuing to do more. And I'm already talking with Adam and Chris about maybe doing, hey, let's get this out and then let's do a single in a couple months, or maybe let's take a collection of maybe they say 4 or 5 of different themes. I'd like to do projects that, although the way that Pretty Good Rapper sounds is kind of my wheelhouse, where it's thick with all of my influences, and it's just me. I'll continue to always do stuff like that, but I do have a lot of other stuff that is different. I mean, it's still hip hop based, and it still has to do with, showing vocal and lyrical skill and prowess with some catchy stuff. But, maybe way more emotional, maybe way more introspective, maybe a little less, punchy and danceable. But nonetheless, I think it's going to connect with people too. So I'm just super excited to get it out of the gates so we can get going on it. And, we'll never stop practicing law. We'll never stop playing music. I'm going to really try to keep both of them moving forward and keep them at as high a level as I can. Because man, life is short, dude. My kids just are getting older, and obviously I am getting older, here. I try to stay young. You can't really tell, but I got the long hair in the back, the headphones kind of So I try to keep myself young there, but everybody goes through it. I'm 2 years shy of hitting that 50 mark. I don't feel any older than I did when I was 30 or 25. I'm still active. I still, I'm sure maybe there's less testosterone in my body, I guess, because that's just the way it is. But I don't feel like I've lost a step. I feel good. I feel like I can do this for, 50 more years. Obviously, fate will tell me otherwise. But until then, man, let's go.
I love that. What can audiences expect at your release on Friday, July 26th?
Okay. So lots of stuff. Obviously, you can expect some Pomeroy. You can expect friends of mine that are in Lost Wax that are coming in to do some stuff with me. You can expect my DJ Sincere, who did the transitions on the record. He is actually my son's DJ teacher. So my son has been for the last 5 years one of the original students at this hip hop school called Break Free KC. Been taking both dance, break dance, and DJ lessons. And part of the show, you're going to see them. Yes. You're going to see my son on the ones and twos at one point in the show, either with his teacher or solo. You're going to see some of the best B-boys and hip-hop dancers in the city that are going to come out and are going to put on a show for everybody at the beginning. So like it's going to be kind of a hip-hop party free-for-all, for the first half of the show. And we're going to get into some special guests, and we're going to get into, without giving away too much, a lot of fun things. And then we're going to get into my set, and my set is going to kind of go back and forth. We're going to get into some Pomroy. There's other stuff that I won't disclose at this time, but you can expect that it's going to be a party. And for anybody who's ever been to the Truman, I've seen a few big shows there. It's a fantastic room. I saw Surfaces there with my wife. Fantastic. And I saw a couple other, but it's a big stage, great lights, great sound, huge room, got the Copper Lounge balcony up top. It's going to be really, really cool. And all I really want is people to come out and have fun. That's why I try not to charge too much per ticket. It's not the cheapest place to rent out, but I'm not trying to make my money back. I'm just trying to put on a big show and just charge enough to maybe have a shot at making my expenses back, maybe whatever. But Lopan Banks has never been about, making money like Pomroy was, because that's how we survived. That was how we lived. That's how we got to the next day. This is a passion project that I hope takes off, but I just want people to come and have fun. It's going to be available. The album's going to be available everywhere 2 days before. And if you don't want to have to pay for it, and you already pay for streaming services like Spotify or whatever, it's going to be absolutely everywhere. Absolutely everywhere that you can find it digitally. It's going to be there. And I'm getting ready to start some new promotions where if we can get people interested in buying either some of the merch or some of the whatever, maybe I'll send out an advance free copy of the album to you personally, with a link on a private server or whatever. We're also at the show. I'm pressing vinyl. We got stacks of awesome vinyl records with cool designs that we're going to do. I'm doing tape cassettes. I'm going old school. No CDs.
Love it.
No. We're into vinyl and cassettes. I just got out the phone with disc makers earlier, tried to strong arm them into getting all my stuff here earlier than it should be, but I think it'll be here on time. So, it's going to be old school party fun. It's all ages. My kids are going to be there. Everybody else's kids are going to be there, especially if you're there early for the fun stuff and the dancing and all that. Man, I want everybody to walk away going, damn, that was a really good show. And kind of, and after walking away from it, be like, oh, crap, I need to get the album, or I need to make sure that I say this.
Love that. So my concluding question always on every episode of Caught on the Mic is, what's your advice for making the world a better place tomorrow than what it is today?
Well, and it sounds corny, but I preach this to my kids every single day whenever they have problems or questions or whatever. It's kind of twofold. It's the old corny, treat other people like you want to be treated. I mean, I grew up in a not overly religious, but a religious household. I was raised Catholic. I don't claim anything anymore. I don't claim a religion. I don't claim any of that. I claim to treat human beings the way human beings should be treated. And I really try to instill that in my kids. I think that's the best thing you can do. All the little stuff, hold open a door for somebody who doesn't need the door held open for. Say hi to somebody when they're walking and they look uncomfortable like me. Sometimes when the beard grows out, I got my hat down and I'm walking up, people think, oh, what's this guy up to? Be nice. I always tell my son, it takes zero effort to be nice. Even somebody who is not being nice to you, kill them with kindness, be nice, turn the other cheek, do the right thing. The older you get, the more you figure out that your gripes and your concerns, the things that we see people posting every day on Facebook, well, I have a thought, I have a conviction, I have a axe to grind. The older I get, the less any of that shit matters, man. And I think what's going to matter at the end of the day is how much time you spent with your family, how well you treated other people, and what people are going to say about you after you're gone. Granted, you're not going to be here to hear it, but I sure would like a little bit of a lasting legacy where my kids could talk kindly of me and other people would say, oh, he was a good dude. He did good things. So that's kind of how I try to treat life.
That is the perfect summation of what I'm going to say to you, sir. It's been 24 years where I've known you at this point. I am so glad to have this interaction with you and have some presence in each other's lives again. The world's a much better place with you in it, Dave. And I'm so excited for this project. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to get a vinyl at some point in time. And I'm hoping that maybe you bring the show back home to your second home.
I think there might be a chance we could do that. I don't know. Again, I mean, I'm all about being transparent, but we got to keep some cards held close to the vest sometimes, right?
Thanks for doing the show, brother. I appreciate you.
Dude, you're the best, man. I also got to tell you, it's same to you, man. I find you to be the same dude that I knew back then, but, just
Evolved.
A better version, stronger, smarter. But yeah, absolutely, dude. I think you're a good dude, and I think you do a good job on this podcast. I think you do a good job interviewing people. I think you're thoughtful with your questions. I want your podcast to blow up and double and triple and quadruple. And you keep putting in the good work that you do, man. I think empirical evidence would show that's the key. So I'm proud of you and congratulations to you. And thank you so much for thinking enough of me to have me on.
Thanks, man. That means the world to me.